Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of Lens with Advanced Design. My name is Hector Silva, and today we have the pleasure of hosting product designer Alessandra Fumagalli Romario. Thank you so much for being here. She's actually joining us from Italy, so we're very excited for you to tune in into today's Lens session. A little bit about Alessandra. After her degree at the Polytechnic of Milan, she moved to London to continue her studies at the RCA, also known as the Royal College of Art. During her master's, she explored deeply her interest in education by designing imaginary language, which is a tool to unlock creativity. She worked for the Italian designer Federica Biasi, and now for the Milanese studio Lorenza Bozzoli. In parallel, she keeps working on her own projects, always looking for new collaborations and stimulating challenges. With her design practice, she always tries to push the boundaries of our system to find new ways to make things, experience the world, and interact with each other. Alessandra, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be invited by Lens. Do I need to share my screen?
Yeah, so we'll get started now. The floor is yours. For those who are tuning in, please ask questions in the Q&A section. I will then integrate it into our conversation, and then we'll go from there. So go ahead and share your screen, and then we'll get started.
Right, thanks. Wait. So, hello everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Alessandra Fumagalli, and today I'm gonna talk a little bit about my background as a designer, and most of all about creativity and play. That for me are two fundamental aspects for a designer. I was born in Milan, and in Milan, Milan is the city where I started my education. I've been to the Polytechnic. That is a university with a strong theoretical aspect. And here I had the opportunity to develop and learn all the technical aspect behind the design process and the designing of an object. For me, Milan was a great city to start approaching the design world, because I was surrounded by the example of the greatest Italian designer. This is the Triennale. Yes. And that really helped me to learn how the importance that objects have in conveying meanings and value. After my BA, I moved to London, and I started to study at the Royal College of Art. Here I developed my critical thinking, and thanks to all the people that I met, I learned the importance of collaboration and as well as discussion. And I started to develop my own design practice. Both the city and the university for me have been crucial for my growth as a designer. Milan for her tradition and history, and London for her propulsion to innovate and provoke. In London, I have the opportunity to develop deeper two themes that are really close to me, that is education and creativity. And from that research, I developed imaginary language. That is my graduation project. Imaginary language is a tool to foster creativity by stimulating imagination through play. The project is based on this psychological theory by the scientist Ingrid Biedermann, who has argued that our human brain is able to recognize objects because it divided them into geons, that are those primordial shapes that you see on the left. People are able to recognize them because they project their own social and cultural experience onto them. Starting from the theory, my aim was to develop a new visual language that could be understood by everyone, but at the same time could allow self-expression. And that's how I develop imaginary language that is basically a set of archetypal geometric shapes, the famous geons, that can be connected together in order to create undefined and open-ended shapes. The set is composed by 8 shapes, 8 different shapes, with 3 different joints that has manions on it. And together it can be combined in order to create different combination. I designed the tool for children, and I experimented it also with actor. But of course, it's for all the people that want to boost their inner potential. For children, the work is a new way to give life, give shape to their imagination. And it helps them to develop different way of making things and see realities. It's a mix between construction toy and role-play games. Basically, the children construct their own toy to play with it. For actor, the project is a new way to stimulate and train their improvisation. So basically, when you train while you are acting, you need to do a lot of improvisation. This tool can help them to give shapes to the situation, the acting that they usually envision with their bodies. With my acting teacher, I developed a series of exercises. For example, this was, they were like, the same shapes was like given to each actors, and everyone had to use it in different ways. So you had to go beyond this, the shapes itself. This one was a choral one. So during the improvisation, the object could change the shapes depending how you use it and who was using it. I keep talking about creativity, and I started this project because I think that nowadays creativity is super important and is a capacity that we really need to stimulate since we are young, and at the same time, while we are adults, we need to keep training. First of all, because it helps us dealing with change. It stimulates our critical thinking, and also it deals us with our social life. I think that imaginary language helps to stimulate creativeness in 3 different ways. First of all, is a game, and while we are playing, we are more free than in any other situation. So, and also is an open-ended game and has no rules. So we said usually with toy is child-driven. The other thing is help us to make as many connections as possible. So the same shapes, depending who is using it, change the function. So for example, here we see 2 girls with the same shapes, but in one case is a megaphone and the other one is a light torch. And that's a really important key through the development of creativity. The third is that it helps us stimulate our imagination. So we cannot see only a cylinder, but we have to see more than that. So it's challenging, but at the same time, it helps us push ourselves and foster our creativity. The second project that I want to talk start with imaginary language. So I try to do a little experiment with myself, and I used imaginary language as a tool to foster my own practice and my creativity. And here, and in this way, I developed Creo, that is a furniture collection that challenge the adult creativity. So it is made by interchangeable pieces, and the user, the adult, has to push himself to construct in different way and combine the pieces in order to create different shapes and furniture to give the function of them. So in a society where usually we have objects that are standardized, here we have the possibility to make our own table, our own lamps, and imagine and creating new shapes in our house. For me, it's really important in this project, for me, the fact that the user is part of the creativity process, because through playfulness, his creativity can be challenged. And in this way, he has to push himself. So after I've illustrated you my two projects, where I explore tools to foster creativity, in this second part of the talk, I would like to talk more about the lesson and the tips, some tips that I've learned during my research into creativity. I hope that they could be useful for some of us, of you. So how can we train our own creativity? That's a tough question. I would start saying that everyone is creative, and we born as creative person, but while we get older, the society pushes us to act according to rules and social norms, and in this way we tend to lose the spontaneity and the wonder that are fundamental for a creative thinking. So the first things that I've learned and I wanted to point is the needs of constraints, because I understood that the more freedom I have, the more I feel lost. So the first thing that I usually do when I need to approach a design project is that I need to bullet out all the characteristics and needs that I want to respect before starting. To try to explain you better what I mean, I have an example from Munari. Bruno Munari used to do this exercise for children, and he used to rip it out paper in random shapes and irregular, and he asked the children to draw onto them. So they had to give shapes and like alive to this ripped piece of paper. And for me, it's fundamental because you have borders, and onto that, you are into the limit, you find the creativity act, the powerful creativity. The second things that I want to talk about is the importance of knowing rules. So when we know things, we can break them. When we know the rule, we can break them. Now we usually say it. Because after we know how things are made and how things works, only after that knowledge, we are able to push ourselves and create something diverse and innovative. Imaginary language started while I was thinking about the idea, I was reflecting around the idea of the importance and the role that function have. In our societies, every object, everything has been designed for something, has a purpose. And we usually say that form follow function is a mantra in the academic, in the design academic. So I start to questioning myself and ask, what if this rule with this rule can this rule be reversed? And that's how, and that's when I start to think about imaginary language. So I try to push myself to approach to the project in a different way, in the opposite way as I usually do. And I start to develop shapes, leaving the user the freedom to decide his own, the function onto them. So that's why function follow form. It was, I think, is a really important thing. The third topic, the third tips that I want to talk about, I discovered while I was reading in Somari, that we lost last week. And in this, in Somari wrote about the importance of the italics. He said that the italics help us to follow the flow of our thoughts. So is a graphic sign that never stop. At least it stop really not always, not often. And drawing is the same. Is the same, or at least is really similar to the italics, because both of them are graphic sign used to express ourselves. So in Somari said that most adults, usually we said most adults are not able to draw, but that's not true. It's not true. In order, it's why we don't train ourselves to draw. As we're kind of losing the italics, the way of writing, because we keep typing and not like we write less than before. So Enzo suggests this, I found it really interesting, this exercise that he suggests to do every morning for 10 minutes. And basically, the idea is to copy an object, always the same, let's say a glass of water, and without touching the surface where the paper is, and never stop the flow of our sign, we have to copy it. In this way, we train the muscle of drawing. And it was really interesting, because I think it's really important why we design, and we try to design something new, and we have to think about it, and we tend to design drawing, and the drawing and the sign that never stop, it really helps. We should see the drawing not as a final step of our design, but as a tool to help us designing and researching. The last tip that I want to share with you is the attitude of hands-on. So why, when I'm stuck, when I can go further with a project, usually what I do is start to make things. It's something that I learned in London and in RCA, and it really helps me. For example, back in RCA, I wanted to design this. I had to design this tool, and it had to be a tool for nursery. And I didn't have no idea. I haven't got any idea of how it would look like. But the thing that I knew was that it had to be light and soft. So I start to play around with sponge that I had at home, and by cutting them and gluing them together, at a certain point I found out those shapes that really intrigued me, and from those shapes, finally my brain start working, and I start to develop this crazy and soft tool that becomes a proper real product. But everything started from the sponge. That was my last tips. Thank you. I finished.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I do have a lot of questions to ask you because your work, you had mentioned that you did that work for your master's degree at the RCA, right? But imaginary language actually has been featured all over the design media. I saw it on Design Milk. I saw it in various publications, and it's very fascinating. It's a very nice approach to play and creativity. But the thing that I found most fascinating is when you were talking about the theory of psychology and how the human brain recognizes objects by isolating them into basic geometrical forms, which are called geons, right?
Yeah.
And then people are able to assign functional meanings to abstract forms by projecting their own social cultural experiential knowledge onto them. So I think you coming up with imaginary language actually is a really nice answer to that theory of psychology.
Yeah, as I remember what was when I was trying to find a method, because the idea was to try to leave the user free to decide his own function. The idea was to give us up forms and then leave the user free to decide the function. And I remember that I was looking into vision theories and talking with some some friends that are studying psychology, and he was like, no, you have to look at this guy. And
well, looks like we lost her. I know there's still some of you tuning in, but essentially there's a lot of questions I wanted to ask her. I don't know if she's coming back. She is actually tuning in from Italy, and you guys should really look up her work. It's very fascinating, and essentially I'm just kind of reading this off of my notes here, but imaginary language is composed of archetypical geometric forms, which can be combined to create undefined and open-ended objects. And I think she talked about this. Children, actors, and those who wish to improve their imagination can use it to boost their expressive inner potential. For children, the work represents a new way to materialize their fantasy, an activity that stimulates them towards developing spatial and social skills. And then I believe she also, kind of tested this on actors, And then for actors, with these objects, they can train their improv skills, giving substance to the narrative context they usually envision with their simple bodies. So, welcome back. Like I mentioned, you're in Italy, I'm in the United States, in Chicago, and I'm sure
Sorry, my internet really
it's
sucks.
okay. It was, the connection from here to Italy. I'm sure it was bound to happen. But I was just talking about, imaginary language and giving them kind of a summary of what it is and how it's used by children and how you tested these objects on actors to improve their improv skills. But there's one question that did come in, and I don't know if you know about the Montessori method of teaching kids. Here in the United States, we have, Montessori schools.
Yeah.
Um, and so one question is, did Montessori methods or Montessori blocks come up during your development and research phase?
Yeah, of course. Montessori, she's an institution for the education world, and she did a lot. And yeah, of course, I think is a super interesting project, and also because she worked a lot around the materials. So she gave a lot of importance in the education through hands, and also by touching different materials, and remember these cubes that you combine together. And she gave she evidenced during her research, and also through all her project, the needs of nature. I remember that thing really fascinated me, and I think it's super important also because nowadays we have children, we are growing up children with a lot of technical devices, and kind of sometimes our way of handle things and touching realities and touch realities is changing. And so I think we have to look a lot back to Montessori's experience and purpose.
So, imaginary language, the physical objects that you came up with, how long did it take you to arrive to that final design and form? How many prototypes and how many concepts did you go through before you finally arrived to the final design?
Many. I start this long process with the children and the actors. So I developed and I made changes and step by step with the users. So I remember the first shapes was the one that you saw also in. It was like pink and super basic pink chemical wood and plastic. And this project be not flexible. So basically there was like a female and a masculine part, how do you say? Yeah, two joints, and that you couldn't not connect all the parts together. So was a limitation. So by trying with the user, I start to develop okay, so now we need something that is, we need the forms and then a joint that is divided by the shapes. And so, and then I also, with the user, I understood the importance of the magnetic. That was something that is super easy and faster because the actors had to handle it really fast because they are doing acting and they cannot stay there and like join things together. And still it's not super, there are three different, so also for the children it's not super easy, it's a little bit complicated, so for them it's also useful because they train it a little bit, the imagination. Yeah, no, yeah, I had to do a lot of prototypes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. You just mentioned that, nowadays with technology, kids have access to iPads, iPhones, and, pretty much computers at their fingertips. but also if you go to the toy store, you go buy, online, if you buy a toy, a lot of that technology is integrated into today's toys,
Yeah.
even infant toys, and so I think a lot of it has to do with how do we keep our kids entertained? How do we keep them distracted? The problem is that that only works for X amount of time. Like it doesn't function, for about a minute. The kids want something, they want to do something else. They want something new. And I think the way that you're solving creativity, but also, interviewing when you were doing your research phase and talking to kids, um, honestly, I think the pressure that is put on the kids to get very creative with these very abstract objects, is actually a really good way to really, push the potential of imagination in children, as opposed to now where a lot of these companies and are shoving technology into toys.
No, yeah. I would like to say two things. The first is, of course, technology is around us, and we need to teach children how to deal with technology, but in a good way. We need to educate them to technology, and that's for sure. So if you put something that is tech, that is smart and tech inside a toy, you don't resolve a lot the question, the problem. And the other thing is, I think we need more toys that are open-ended, that doesn't say to the children what you have to do with that are completely. Imaginary language in this way works pretty well because it's based on the theory. Our brain works in this way, so you don't have to say to the children, oh, it works in this way, you have to create something from that. They just start playing, and if they are together, they create a situation, and but if they are alone, they start to create also shapes and castles, and also by themselves. Like I remember, like when I was playing with this guy, with this little boy, and he started to going around and looking for animals with the glass, the magnifying glass. It was like, what are you doing? It was like just playing around, but giving shapes to the imagination, to the world that it was like imagining around him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple more questions to ask you. You mentioned this as well, but you're a student, or an Italian designer, who then went to London to RCA, which is a very prestigious school, and coming from Italy and now working in Italy again. How much influence does Italian design have in your work? But also, do you feel any type of pressure or intimidation because Italian design is in its own category. When we're talking about industrial design, you have people like Enzo, which you brought up. We have Alessi. We have on and on and on. A lot of these famous designers are a staple in design history. Did you take any influence, or was that a motivating factor?
No, absolutely influence, and I'm really glad of it. Of course, like is the attitude, how we approach design, and I mean how, as the Polytechnic, especially how I approached design, it was in the Italian method. It had some, it's not all good, but at the same time, it really, the surround, like I put the image of Triennale because for me it's a super important place in Milan, and it's an institution for design in all Italy. And I'm so proud that it's in Milan. And I think it's really important to what Paolo Antonella did this last year, 2 years ago, because at the same time in Italy there is this idea of design that is design with industry, and that's it. There is less space for experimenting, I mean, less than before. I don't know if it's something that it's all around the globe. I imagine, yeah, a little bit is. But in London, I found more there was more this idea of push the boundaries more. Yeah, let's say. And yeah, but I don't think, I think I see in Italy more, not oppression, but more a challenge, in a way that you are surrounded by amazing designers that did the history of design, and you are like, wow, let's try to learn from them, but I think the amazing thing also here in Italy is the craftsmanship, this historical, and we are really attached to our tradition. Around Milan there is Brianza, Monza, Brianza, where there is all this part of Italy where there are a lot of companies and industry where since ages they make, and they know how to make. There are a lot of artists that they know how to make furniture. They know how to carve the wood, and it's really nice, and it's amazing to go there and talk with them and have this confrontation. For that, I think I'm really lucky. I think respect London, we need a little bit more of pushing and try to experimenting a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, and you know, the same thing with you know, Milan Design Week and the Saloon del Mobile, which is, you know, the furniture fair that happens every year in Milan. You know, here it was canceled because of the coronavirus, or the coronavirus pandemic, and it was moved to 2021. Being an Italian designer, how amazing is it to have that in Italy and you have access to that? Because that is something that on a global scale, a lot of designers, that is like on my wish list, and I'm sure a lot of designers who are tuning in would also one day would love to visit, you know, Milan's Design Week and their furniture fair, because it is an amazing thing that happens every year.
Yeah, I feel really lucky actually, because I think it's one of my favorite parts during the year. And yeah, this year was really pity. But I think it makes a lot of designers think a little bit more about if, like in the fashion industry happen, that we need to slow down a little bit, because yeah, the event was canceled and like many money was lost, and the designer couldn't explain or show their product in the way that usually they do. But at the same time, they make them slow down a little bit and start to rethink how we are making things and how the industry, the contemporary industry is working. If we need to push it as much as doing a fair every year. But still, Design Week is amazing. I love it. And I think, yeah, it's a fantastic moment where we, where you can meet people from all around the globe and share your work. All the time I meet a new person, and I have the opportunity to see other friends that I usually can never see because they're around.
Absolutely. And so one last question is, as a designer who does have access to, you know, these opportunities like the you know, Milan Design Week, are you able to submit work and get your work featured, or how difficult is that? Is that only reserved for really big companies? And so that's a very interesting, you know, question to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think RCA was a great window in the way that doing our show, we had the opportunity to meet a lot of people, show our project, talk with them. And I feel really sorry for all the people that last year couldn't do it, but they managed amazingly. I could see and so many projects of designers that couldn't have this opportunity. The other thing is, so university is important to have a university that push you to and like present you and your project to the world, that's for sure. And then a suggestion, maybe, because I think most of the time is when you apply to, when you do application to, I don't know, grants or also competition, if you win or if you can be selected, you have a big opportunity to be featured, to have your work shown in magazines and also in fairs. And I think that's really important, and it's something that all the designer, students designing, especially when we are younger, we have to do it. We should do it. Also because it is an experiment, is an exercise for us, but also because a challenge, it's an opportunity for sure. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for being a part of Lens. We really appreciate you coming on and talking about your project, Imagineering Language and Creativity. And most importantly, what you're doing in Italy and what influences you. So thank you for your insights. And for those who tuned in, thank you so much. The session will be uploaded into our YouTube channel. So for those who missed it, they can reference it. And yeah, I know in Italy right now, it's close to 9 p.m. Or past 9 p.m. In Chicago, it's still afternoon. So it's pretty crazy that's
yeah.
the world works. But here we are. Thank you for tuning in and for your time. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.